Welcome to the Gospel According to podcast, the first and only podcast looking at the intersection of pop culture and the Christian faith. I'm Dan Ulrich, joined as always by my co-host. You might know him as one of the 14 people walking around the airport in a lime green shirt. That's Dave Hallahan.
Yes, the classic youth group matching t-shirts, because it's like a family reunion. We're the family of God. You want
to make sure you're seen as you're going to do God's work.
And the bright, yes. I do think when you're traveling with a bunch of teenagers, it is good to put them in bright colors and all the same bright color so that you can do a quick head count, It's important. It matters. Not wearing a lime green shirt, but joining us today, you may know him as a Dallas Cowboys fan, but Jesus loves him anyway. It's Carlos Pinero from YouthWorks joining us today. How you doing, Carlos?
I'm doing great. Great to be here, guys. I like you said, even agreed to be here with a couple Eagles fans.
There you go.
Coming at you from, God's team, I hear is what they say about the Cowboys.
Yes. So the last 30 years must have been punishment for something, I guess. Not quite 30. Is it like 20 something years? But
yeah, we decided to give other people a shot, I guess, after all those rings.
You came to serve, right? Not to be served. Right? So I appreciate it.
That's it.
Yeah, our allegiances are higher than football here. So, unified in Christ. And this is, what are we here for, Dan? This is the gospel according to?
Missions trips.
There it is.
Short-term missions trips.
Yeah. All of us with some experience there, I think, right?
A little bit.
Yes, I think we've mentioned the first missions trip that both of us have been on, Dave, was together. And that was the infamous Toronto trip, correct?
Yeah. And
where you shaved your feet and wore a skirt.
Yes.
Lots of good memories.
Both of those have come up before, but might as well bring it up again, Dan. Yes. Yeah. Shaved my feet to impress a girl, which, that's what 14-year-old boys do. This is just how my brain worked, I guess, at the time. Didn't work. Wore a kilt.
A plaid skirt.
Okay.
In an international airport. Yes, that is true.
Was that also to impress the girl? That combined with the foot shaving?
No.
I think they worked opposite of each other and they just kind of canceled
each other out. Yes. We left with the same feelings towards one another because it was a net neutral at the end of the day. No, I think that was just me being an obnoxious American. I think I got a kilt or skirt at a thrift store while we were there. And I wore that and one of the Cat in the Hat style hats, but it was with a Canadian flag on it. So yeah, I mean, I was
height of fashion, Dave Hallahan.
I was a 14-year-old American in Canada. What are you gonna do?
But yeah, besides that, I've went on missions trips as a youth pastor, led missions trips both domestically and internationally. This summer, next year, our church is going on some different trips with organizations we worked with in the past and people we know. So yeah, I've been around. I see, we'll get into it, the obvious value of it and some of the things that can make it or break it in that way.
Yeah. And Carlos, you're working now with YouthWorks, but tell us a little bit about yourself, especially in regards to, today's topic, missions trips. Did you have experience with missions trips before you got connected with YouthWorks? And then what are you doing with YouthWorks?
I did. I'd say mission trips were pretty influential in my life. I think I went on my first mission trip in seventh grade to Juarez, Mexico, which they don't take seventh graders to Juarez anymore. But that was
your week. They stopped.
I broke it. I don't know. But yeah, went on mission trips as a teenage, college student, youth pastor.
Yeah.
And now I'm vice president of mobilization for YouthWorks, and we'll help about 11,000 people this year take mission trips in 30 or so locations. So love connecting people to mission and to serving where God would have them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think very similar experience here. Went on missions trips as a teenager and then led several, plenty of stories. And certainly as a plug for organizations like YouthWorks, I've done several mission trips that I kind of ad-libbed myself. And it's much better when you go through an organization and they can set some of that stuff up for you for sure. But yeah, good times on mission trips for sure.
So what YouthWorks, like what types of trips do you run? Is it the whole gamut, urban trips, work trips? What does a week look like through
Yeah,
YouthWorks?
yeah. There's definitely a gambit. For about 30 years, YouthWorks has created mission trips primarily for teenagers, and we were started from a youth pastor who just noticed, man, like these kids grow more in their faith more in a week than they do all
Mm-hmm.
the Sunday school classes I do
Yeah.
all year long. And so, yeah, for a while, we've done mission trips in a bunch of different locations, primarily domestically in the United States and in Puerto Rico. But the locations in the projects can, of course, vary drastically. So we're in larger urban areas. We have smaller towns. We're in rural areas, a few different Indian reservations, U.S. Mexico border, Puerto Rico. So it can vary, but anything that we're doing, we're coming alongside of local leaders is really our key, and we want to respectfully serve those communities. So we just ask the local people who are there year round, who are doing the good work, hey, how could a group serve you guys? What do you need? And then we just go off of what they say, and want to make sure that we connect either church groups or schools or other types of groups to support the good work that's happening year round in those communities.
And I think that's so important. And that's one of the things that I've kind of grown in my own vision and understanding with doing trips and things like that is this whole idea of partnering.
Mhm.
That, I'm sure with YouthWorks or, anytime we're going into a place that we're not bringing Jesus to, Puerto Rico. Like he's already there. Like there's good Christian organizations, there's churches that are already working there. We're not, the savior of these places on this missions trip. And practically we'll only be there a week. So, anything that's started or accomplished, okay, now we're gone. How is that going to continue? So I think that's huge, Carlos, just that idea of, okay, these are the ministries that are going to be there 52 weeks a year, the 51 weeks that I'm not there. How can we give them a boost of energy, a boost of like getting done a project that maybe they couldn't normally do with their funds or staffing or volunteers, and kind of just uplift them for the work that they're doing the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean that's really key. And for us, we talk a lot about just listening and learning. Again, these folks in all of these communities, they're the experts.
Right.
They're the ones we just don't hear their names all the time. Like
Yeah.
they're not in the media. They don't have big Twitter handles or something. They're just there serving the needs and preaching the gospel and doing what they're doing all throughout the year. So for a group to come in to listen to what they need, to learn from them, and just to come alongside of in the places that they want and not in the places that they don't want. And that's how you serve. That's how people learn. That's how we grow together.
Yeah, I love that, and I think there's a lot of talk. I think there was the book, right, when helping hurts or whatever, and there can be, I think, in the American kind of evangelical church, especially in like middle to upper middle class places, like you can have kind of a saviorism that we're gonna go in and we're gonna whatever be the heroes of the day or whatever. But I think listening to the people who have feet on the ground, year round. They're there serving the communities, living in the communities, and then listening to them and coming alongside, or even like taking a backseat, doing the behind the scenes work so that they can continue to do the upfront work that they're doing. You don't have to go in for the recognition. And I think that's one of the ways that I think I've seen mission trips go right is when you are, partnering with and kind of taking instruction from those who are there with feet on the ground year round, and just coming and aiding them rather than coming in with your own agenda of, I've heard about this place and in my mind, these are the things that they need to be better. And so let's try and make that happen in a week as if that were a realistic goal anyway.
Going along with that, I'm sure in the 30 years, YouthWorks, you've been constantly refining and changing things, or just in the landscape of missions trips that has really kind of exploded in these last maybe 25 uh, years with youth groups. Where have you seen it gone wrong, Carlos?
Mm-hmm. I'm actually going to put more of a personal spin on that because I feel like I've been the recipient of a mission trip gone wrong before.
Okay.
I told you I've been a youth pastor, and there's one time I was youth pastoring a few years. I won't say where the church, but inner city youth ministry. Had a fairly large youth ministry there, and I remember one time there was like the larger, I'll be honest, white suburban church who was going to come down, and we thought it was like a get together. Our churches are going to come together and do this like grill out party thing. We didn't know that they were promoting it as like a mission trip or a service project.
Yeah.
And so the area that I'm in is primarily Latino. It's Hispanic, mostly Mexican immigrant families, but most of the people in our church didn't speak Spanish. It was just the dynamic that we had in that community.
Right.
And so this church comes down, and I kid you not, they get a trailer and they pull up and they open up the trailer to pull out all of the piñatas.
Oh no.
Oh man, and we're like, no, you've got to put the piñatas back. We're not doing piñatas. We're not going to do that. But yeah, they come out with the piñatas and all the matching T-shirts and all of that. Is like, this is not what we were. This is not what we were expecting. So it's like what we said before. Mission trips can tend to go wrong in some form or another when you're just kind of imposing what you want onto whatever that community is that you're going into. And sometimes it's well-meaning and it's unintentional, but it happens. And sometimes that's even the way that group or that person wants to serve. Like if you go into a community and say, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do this thing, well, that can have unintended consequences. It's not necessarily the thing that community wants or the community leaders want or the people want. And sometimes it can even cause more harm than good. So the key is making sure that there's partnership, making sure that what you're doing is actually what the people want is going to do the most good for that community. So definitely seen it go wrong, even personally.
Yeah. We've talked about this in various aspects of Christianity, but again, I think it applies to mission trips as well. And that is relationships and the importance that actual relationships play in all areas, but in mission trips. That church that came down to you guys, if they had any like real relationship with you and with your congregation, then they would have known that bringing a bunch of piñatas was inappropriate. And I understand that if you want to go somewhere even further away for a mission trip or whatever, you're not going to have established relationships with people, but you can partner with someone like YouthWorks who they have maintained those relationships. And so you're not walking in blind and you don't have to make assumptions because there's actual real relationship to play off of there.
Yeah. And that's the really cool thing that even just coming on board at YouthWorks, I jumped on board last year in my role, but one of the reasons that the organization and the ministry really stood out to me and that I wanted to be a part of it is not many organizations have long-lasting relationships like that. So when we talk about the relationships and the places that we're serving, we're talking about key partners that have been on the ground in communities for 10, 20, 30 years that we've had a relationship with over the years that we're connecting different groups to come alongside of.
Yeah, and it's a lot of times it's well-meaning and maybe short-sighted. It seems like, oh, this is a great idea, but if you had those relationships, or even like you zoomed out a little bit, we've worked with a missionary and a community in Guatemala for the past 10 years, and they have stories of well-meaning churches or organizations that it's like to give every family like a laptop. But what they needed was clean drinking water. And they didn't have the means to charge the laptop. They didn't have, internet access and things like that. And so really just trying to get to, okay, are we helping in the ways that would most benefit them, that they see the need, the community leaders see the needs, or even, bigger organizations that we think of as, okay, this is a great idea. Like I'll put Tom's shoes on blast. Giving people free shoes sounds like a great idea. But this village in Guatemala that received those shoes, well, guess what? That put a cobbler out of business because he couldn't sell any shoes because everybody got free shoes or repair shoes or just influx of things that we seem like we've worked with somebody from our church disaster relief in the Gulf Coast, like during hurricanes, and everybody like there's tractor trailers of used clothes that are sent down to places that just had a hurricane, and like that's not what they need. Like,
Yeah.
and just those ideas of like I'm doing something good, so it has to be right, it has to be good, no matter what, because I think it's good, because on the surface it seems like a good thing. But if we don't have those people that have relationships, the community leaders, and it's just a one way of things of like doing what we want, like you said, then that's when like Dave said, the book, when helping can actually be hurting.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, there's another. You reminded me of something with talking about the disaster relief. We've been talking to a few different disaster relief organizations recently to see how we might be able to help. And something that we've actually heard from those organizations is sometimes the people themselves or the number of people that want to come can actually be of harm, because what tends to happen, like there's a timing aspect to it too, where there's a natural disaster, everybody wants to go to this one place, but the infrastructure can't even necessarily support all of those people at one time. The organizations can't support that number of people, that there's different things that are needed even in different seasons of whatever sort of relief work that's happening.
Right.
And that particularly happens with disaster relief, where we might not need all of these people a week after a hurricane happens. We need some of them. We really need more people to go a year or 2 or 5 years after to do the recovery work that's needed. And that's a lot of times what gets forgotten about.
And then the news cycle changes. And then 2 years later, when they need it, people are heading to the next disaster relief site.
Yeah. I think all of this, like that kind of question of when does it go right? When does it go wrong? I think the answers that we're sharing, to me, it shows that it can be about what you do, but more than that, it's like the heart and the intention behind it. Because I think all of these like go wrong stories, probably not from a intentionally selfish or self-centered place, but that's what it is, right? It's centering me, the one who can help. And this is what I can offer. So I'm going to offer it, because who wouldn't want clothes? Who wouldn't want people to come down? I got a group of 20 people. Who wouldn't want that? So we're just going to do it, rather than centering those who you're trying to help and say, do you need our help? And if yes, what do you need? What would best serve you and your community? And I think that heart of, if you really want to help, then center those who you're trying to help, rather than centering myself with, well, here's what I can do, or here's what I think you need. But just to even ask that, lead with that question of how can we best be of service? And what you just brought up with the disaster relief, when can we best be of service?
Absolutely.
A lot of this comes into like pre-trip planning, and that's why organizations like YouthWorks is a great way to go through, because they've done this for 30 years. They have the things in place. And so before a trip, what do you see as being important? What are some of the things that YouthWork does to try to prepare, help not only the leaders, but the participants that are going?
Yeah, we found, to even emphasize this, we found the pre-trip planning process to really be increasingly important in mission trips. And the reason I say that is just a lot of folks going on mission trips are like our youth ministries, their youth group. But especially since COVID, there's a lot of new youth pastors out there. There's a lot of bivocational leaders. There's a lot of volunteer leaders who are leading groups, and they haven't led a mission trip before. And so having resources to help with basic things like how are we going to find the money? Like, how are we going to raise funds to do this? A plan to do that is incredibly helpful. It's honestly, I think it's our number one like downloaded resource is like ideas for fundraising. Recruiting students, like how are we going to talk about this? When are we going to start promoting this? Learning about the community, as we're talking about, that we're going to enter into. I think a really cool thing about YouthWorks is before we send folks on trips, we give them resources about the type of community that they're entering into, because there's differences in how you're going to interact with those people in the community based off of where it is. Doing ministry in a rural small town is different and will have a little bit different approach than going into a major city or into an Indian reservation. So knowing and discussing some of those issues and the particular issues of that community before a group shows up is incredibly important for the learning, and for their posture, like you're talking about, before they ever even enter in. And I think when those resources are provided on the front end, it's going to make the trip better, and it's probably going to be more transferable to help people serve once they get back home as well.
Yeah, and rather than the youth pastor scrambling to like try and find things otherwise, YouthWorks is going to be like, here you go.
There you go. Absolutely.
So Carlos, we've been getting a lot of questions, a lot of DMs. People are hounding Dave today at the preschool graduation, and they all are asking, so what's the gospel according to missions trips?
The gospel according to mission trips. Well, at its very core, I think about the incarnation of Jesus. So Jesus left. We see that in Philippians 2. Jesus humbled himself. Jesus came to serve. He put on human flesh. I love John 1 and like the message where it says he moved into the neighborhood. And he came to serve, not to be served, to give his life as a ransom for many. He died on the cross. He rose again. That's the good news of the gospel, is that movement of Jesus towards us. And if you're doing mission trip, and I'd preface this, if you're doing a mission trip in the right way, we should be leaving our own comforts. We should be putting our own privilege at the door. We should go into a community knowing that Jesus first left his comfort to go to this community and to go to these people. And so I'm going to enter with that same posture as Jesus did, as a servant, as one to serve and not to be served, as one to put the needs of that community above my own. And I think when that happens, and when it happens in the right way, we're exalting what Jesus did for us, ultimately what he did for us on the cross.
Yeah, I love that. The obvious aspect of Christ likeness and going and serving. And I think we see also in Christ and then in the disciples and apostles afterwards is a partnership. And I think that's what comes to my mind when we talk about the gospel according to mission trips. Because I think not that it's a false gospel, but maybe like a misplaced priority gospel, that I think a lot of teens and even those who lead mission trips think that, well, we are bringing the good news and we're going to bring healing and salvation to this place. And maybe like that's going to be a part of it. But again, then you're centering yourself. But Jesus didn't do it by himself. He invited others into that work. The disciples, it wasn't just the 12 of them that went out and did it. Paul always had different partners that traveled with him, but then he's writing letters to the churches and thanking them for their partnership in the gospel. And so I think the gospel message of missions trips is partnership, and it exposes you to new partnerships. There are organizations that that have set up my mission trips, but then when we've gone, like local organizations that I've stayed in touch with because I fell in love with what they're doing, and I'm not local to what they're doing, but I can still, I can get their newsletters. I can be praying for them. I can reach out to them and see how things are going. And so I think partnership is a key element of mission trips as well.
Yeah. And like we said earlier, if Jesus is already doing something in that community, he's already partnered with that community.
Right.
Like he's already with that leader. He's already with that effort. He's already with that service project or organization or that church. So you coming in and saying, well, I'm coming to join in the partnership that Jesus has already started here. Yeah. I'm not Jesus. I'm not bringing Jesus. He's here. I'm just coming to see what he's already doing and to come alongside of what he's already doing in this community.
Carlos, what would you say to Aunt Ethel that approaches you after church and says, why are you going there? We have homeless people here. We have food kitchens here. We have thrift stores here. Why can't you just do the work in our own community?
So we should be doing the work in this community as well. The truth is there's so much need in all of these communities. If I drive 8 hours away and serve that community, I can there are many times I can do much of the same efforts here. The unique thing about a mission trip is that a lot of times it opens people's eyes to the need even in their own community. Because it takes, especially with young people, it takes getting out of the comfort zone and getting out of your own space and getting out of your own environment and getting out of your own rhythm and social media feed and everything that you're trapped in every day to open your eyes to the needs of other people that are around you. And sometimes physically leaving your normal space and going to a new community and meeting a different group of people that are different than you, it exposes you to things that when you come back, it can actually increase. It opens your eyes. It softens your hearts to some of the needs that are around you. So I would say, yes, absolutely. We should serve the needs here. And one good way to do this is let's introduce people to this concept and let's bring it back and let's continue this work year round in our own community as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I was just talking with someone about like the power of stories and the way that stories have a transformative power over us. And we see this in Jesus's ministry with the parables that he tells. Jesus could have come down and said, God the Father loves you. Even if you run away from him, he's waiting for you to return. But instead of saying it like that, he told the story of the prodigal son. And that had transformative power for the original readers or listeners. And now we're reading it back and it still has power. And I think in a way, going on a missions trip is learning a story. It's hearing a story that, Aunt Ethel could have a Sunday morning where she gets up there and says, you should join me at the local soup kitchen. And she's not wrong when she says that. But when I take a group of 15 teenagers, to a different state, to a different place, and they're out of their comfort zone, and now they're interacting with different people, and they get the story of those people. When they come back, they can be transformed by that story that they were told, that they lived out, by the experience that they had. And then they can take the truths that they've learned and they can start to serve here. But I think, we can all I want to live in that ideal world where I and everyone else understands I need to serve my local community. But sometimes you have to experience serving somewhere else. And especially when you're a teenager, like there's something cool and exciting about leaving the place that you normally live, going to a different state. And, your senses, I think, are heightened and your heart is more open. And so that experience can prepare you for the ideal of serving right where you are.
And it's so powerful. I'm a big proponent, as 3 youth pastors or formal youth pastors here, of those times when groups can get to be together, not just the hour Sunday morning or Sunday school or youth group, of going away on a retreat for 3 days, of going away to camp for 7 days, going away on a missions trip where the soul, well, not the soul, but the main idea of the week is like getting closer to God, of connecting with God. Can we worship 2 times a day, read our Bible, have Bible studies at home in a regular day? Yes. But do we always do that? No. And so the getting away from it, of being together with like-minded people, of encouraging each other, going through shared experiences, it revitalizes churches and youth groups, that they come back and it's like, yeah, then let's do that same stuff here, but learning how to do it, learning that it is something that is a need and that we can do it. And those friendships that I've seen made on missions trips that then come back and are friendships within the church, that are people starting ministries, or even people being changed on missions trips. Dave and I know of multiple people that have become full-time missionaries because of going on these short-term missions trips.
Yeah, there's a couple things I'll point out that's so true about what you said. One, the revitalization of ministries and youth groups and churches because of mission. I absolutely hear that. I had a youth pastor recently tell me that their mission trip pulled their ministry out of the toilet. Very youth pastory language, but it was a great statement, because it's what we're talking about. When you get a group of people that do something that's hard together, it builds community in a way that other things don't. And when people come back excited to continue it, it can change ministry. And we're in a church culture right now that's honestly struggling, and ministries that are struggling, and youth ministries that are struggling. I hear so many youth pastors saying that they're trying to rebuild their ministry to what it was pre-COVID. Now, I don't think everything's going back to necessarily what it was,
right?
But doing things that sometimes seem difficult, doing things that are out of people's comfort zone, it seems counterintuitive, but it's actually helping spur kind of a
Yeah.
new era of ministry. I think it's what a lot of ministries need. The other thing that was really cool, what you said, is kind of that pipeline that of missionaries and hopefully the next generation of pastors and leaders in this country. It's really cool to hear a lot of youth pastors today and college professors and others who said, hey, I went on a youth group mission trip when I was younger, or I served on summer staff when I was younger. And it's something that helped build a pipeline to other forms of ministry or even going overseas. And one of the big reasons that I joined YouthWorks and I came on board is because if we don't connect more young people, particularly to service and mission, it's going to dry up the future pipeline that the next generation of the church needs.
Yeah.
That's largely why I do this.
Yeah.
Is I want to see another generation of missionaries and of church planters and of pastors who haven't just learned about something in seminary, but have actually experienced service and mission firsthand.
Yeah. I think that firsthand experience is key. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that that experience can lead to them wanting to be and to hearing God's voice call them into some sort of ministry work. But even beyond that, like just to have people who are service minded, even if they're not working in ministry, our natural inclination is not to serve others. And our world is not putting messages in front of us that are serve others, serve others. And so you have to be intentional. And I think if you can be intentional about that with people of a younger age, so that it becomes a habit. Every summer, this is what I do. And then they start serving in your local congregation. So it's every week, this is what I do at church. And then they start to see needs around them. And it builds into them. Where can I help? How can I serve other people? Because we need those future leaders of the church and of different, parachurch organizations. But we also just need people who are going to be parents and who are going to be school teachers and who are going to be police officers and firefighters and plumbers and electricians who want to serve other people.
Yes.
And so this is, laying that groundwork for people to put service into practice and for it to become a habit.
So, Carlos, before we go into our game section, YouthWorks has been, you said 30 years, been around 11,000 people this year. Is that what you said?
Yeah, something like that between our different kind of programs that we do.
Okay, that's all. So what's next for YouthWorks? Where are we going? We're going to Mars? We're missionaries to the moon?
I don't think so. Not yet. Not until it's populated with Elon Musk's friends or something. And we need to send people that way. Not just like we've been talking about. A lot has changed in ministry the last 10 to 15 years, but particularly post-COVID. And I think the mission trip is changing as well. So for us, we've had a history of doing what we call like turnkey mission trip experiences, where somebody can show up, a youth pastor can show up with a group, and everything's handled for them. It's going to be 6 nights. Everything is ready to go. But I think the future looks a lot more like coming alongside of those leaders, those next generation ministry leaders, and saying, what do you need? And let us help craft a mission trip around the vision of your church or the way that you want to serve. Just in the same way that we listen to local communities, we're way more pressing into now, what's the vision that you have for your church, and how can we pair that with ministry, with service that's needed in a local community? So maybe it doesn't look like 6 days. Maybe it looks like 3 days. Maybe it doesn't look like a youth group, but it looks multi-generational, or it looks like a different age bracket. So we're doing that a lot more. We call that YWX, with custom mission trips. That launched last year, and we're seeing a lot more interest in that as far as mission trips go. The other thing that we're going to be pressing into more in the future is kind of this service learning model. So we have a partner ministry that we work with called Border Perspective, that's on the Texas-Mexico border. And not only is it serving the needs of, let's say, the migrant community there, but also listening to the migrant leaders, listening to Border Patrol, getting outside of the news headlines and learning firsthand from the people that are on the ground, and making sure that we prioritize listening to those local leaders. And so in the coming years, we're going to be piloting some new programs to wrap around particular issues in regards to justice. So whether that be homelessness or racial reconciliation or disaster relief, like we talked about earlier, where we'd love to help groups not only serve there, but also spend some dedicated time listening to the leaders and learning from those who are doing that throughout the year.
That's so great. I've seen that happen in my own church. Like, uh, I live in a very conservative area of New Jersey, and you know, at Bible studies or just around town, you would hear of things, people's view on immigration, and not always the nicest, most loving view on immigration, or people coming into our country from other places. We went on a trip to the community that I talked about in Guatemala, and heard a story from one of the workers there that lived in the village. And he talked about his son who has this rare disease, and he'd have to once a month drive like 4 hours back and forth to the capital city to get his son this treatment that a surgery could just do in America one time, and him be, fine for the rest of his life. And so him talking about, bringing his son across the border into America to be able to have that done. And when we have those experiences where, like you said, it's not just a news article, this is a real father, loves his son, wants what's best for him, is willing to, do something that people think is, is wrong or terrible, or racist undertones to all those things. But you see the need of somebody, you see the heart of somebody, and it's going to completely change your perspective rather than staying in your bubble and just being fed things from other people's perspectives.
Yeah, you have a much different perspective when you have a person and a face associated with that issue or with that cause versus just reading what's on Twitter for that day. And so a lot more at YouthWorks, we're thinking about how can we create more space, or how can we create more environments where people can hear the stories of people in these communities, or people who are experiencing some level of injustice, or those who are working to fix certain issues in communities, and to tell those stories and have more churches, more ministries, more young people hear what that is and change, because again, it's a story. It's not just an issue. It's a person. It's not a headline.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Great hearing what you're doing. But before we let you leave, tradition here at the Gospel According to Carlos, would you like to play a game?
Let's play a game.
Woo,
we've played this before. So Dave and Carlos, I'm going to present a situation around missions trips, but also maybe just evangelism as a whole. And you're going to tell me, is that cool or is that cringe? You understand?
Cringe or cool?
Cringe
Got
or
it.
Cool. All right, first one. Giving out tracts to your waitress as a tip. What could be better than eternal life?
I'm going hard cringe.
Yeah, this is a cringe one. This is a cringe one.
Carlos, have you ever worked in the service restaurant industry?
I haven't, but if you're going to give out the tract, then I'd say you better leave like $100 tip or something with it. Maybe if you're adamant about that tract, then you better give the best tip.
Yes,
you've ever given alongside of it.
Yes, I, as a former server, can tell you I've thrown away many tracts, and they typically come from the worst tippers. You need to be, if you want me to even think about looking at that, you got to leave at least 20%. You have to be at least the right amount of tip, but you should probably be like, we're talking like 30-40%. For
sure.
If you really want that to have an impact.
I mean, not going to hell is a pretty big impact, Dave.
Yeah, it should be worth your 40% tip to get somebody to not go to hell. I agree.
All right. Wearing a t-shirt that says, "Ask me about Jesus." Cringe or cool?
How do you feel about this one, Carlos?
For me, I would never wear that t-shirt. so it cringes me out, if that's a word. But there's probably a lot to do with context. Where is this shirt being worn?
I'm a little more middle of the road, but I feel the same way. Like, I would never wear that. And I think there are cooler ways to do the same thing. Like, Dan, you had made shirts for one of our retreats that said "Love like Jesus." And I think we got Jesus's name in there, and somebody certainly could ask me about that. What does that mean to you? Or like, why would you want to love like Jesus? Christians are stupid. Like, we can, whether they're coming in happy or sad about this, like, it could start a conversation. I have a t-shirt that says, or a hoodie that says Jesus and therapy, and I have people ask me about that all the time. So I think there are ways that are a little less on the nose that can get the job done and would certainly be cooler.
I would love to hear the story of the person who wore the asked me about Jesus t-shirt and it was like incredibly effective for them.
Yeah.
I have yet to hear that story.
Send your stories to tgatpod@gmail.com. All right. We want to hear the victory stories about the Ask Me About Jesus t-shirts.
Love to hear it.
All right, next one. Going to the Bahamas in February because they need to hear about Jesus, and it's cold in New Jersey in February.
Well, I'm in Texas, so it's not that cold in February here. I feel like I don't need a mission trip excuse to go to the Bahamas. So I don't know. I'm just like, let's go. I mean, they do need Jesus in the Bahamas, so let's go. But I don't think we need a mission trip excuse. Let's just go, and if end up having a conversation about Jesus there
you go.
Awesome, made the trip even better.
Yeah,
I'm just pro Bahamas, I think.
Yeah, Jesus has called all of us to go and make disciples, right? So call it a mission trip or not, let's go. And we'll talk to people about Jesus.
Meeting your future spouse on a missions trip. Cringe or cool?
Cool. I think
cool. Yeah.
Future spouse seems awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. It was not on a mission trip, but my first date with my wife, I was really intense. I'm not going to lie. I basically grilled her, but we ended up talking about missions and mission trips for most of our first date because we had both been on multiple of them. It was a very common interest that had us connect, and we got married. So
nice.
Yeah, that's great. And Dan and I, we both met our future wives at camp, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So,
summer camp. Christian summer camp. Shout out Kyle Crawford and Sam, now Crawford. They
met on a mission trip with you?
Yeah, to Guatemala that we took the young adults from church.
Very nice.
Sending your ungrateful kid on a mission trip to a developing country to show them how good they have.
Oh, man, this is going to depend a lot on how that conversation goes with the parent. Like, not a bad instinct, but I think it could be very cringe the way a parent goes about that.
Yeah, it's kind of a middle of the road. Probably depends on the kid and where they're going and the partners and what you're doing on the ground. I think it's healthy for kids to be exposed to very different environments and those that live differently or those who might not have as much. That can be a good thing to be grateful for what we have. I think that's okay. But the hard issue and posture going into that, we definitely don't want to.
Not with missions trips, but like as youth pastor, I have had parents in the past who used youth group as a punishment. Like, you were bad, you have to go to youth group. And I'm like, what is the message that we're sending about youth group then? Like, maybe you using your parental authority and discernment to be like, my kid would benefit from a missions trip. And so they're going whether they like it or not. But the way I talk to them about it is, oh, you'll have fun. This will be good. Like, cool, I'm here for it. But you're a little brat. And so you have to go on this missions trip. Cringe.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I think that's one of the things too, is again, the posture, the thinking of it. One of the things that Herber Perez, missionary in Guatemala, he's, instilled in me is so often we go on these trips with that in mind of like, look at how much we have compared to how much they have in those terms of like, look at, how much more fortunate we are, but that we would expand our thinking in that way of like, okay, yes, maybe material things we have more than them, but let's look a little deeper. Where are we impoverished compared to them?
Right.
Their family structure, does it seem like that's stronger? Does it seem like there's more joy and contentment, even though they have less, that I wish that I had having more? Like, where are we impoverished in our communities and our relationships and our spirituality of those things of like, let's not just make it about material things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that you're not very far removed in that kind of thinking of like, look at how much better we have it. Like that's very close to like colonizing slaveholder type theology of like, yeah, but like aren't their lives better now that they're in America? Or even like very just capitalistic theology of like we've got it better. We have more things, as if things were the point of the gospel. I think God has people in different situations, and the same call is on all of us to be faithful where we are. And so I can be faithful. Paul says, I've learned I can do all things through Christ, right? The most famous verse taken out of context. But what Paul is saying there is it doesn't matter what I have. If I have a lot, I'm thankful to God. If I have a little, I'm thankful to God. And so it's not, yeah, I think taking our eyes off of our things altogether would be healthy.
I like, Dan, what you were talking about with just, you're kind of getting into is just how we define poverty really, really matters. Because you enter into that, and not only you may see that they lack in material possessions in that environment, but are rich in other things. And if you
Absolutely.
define poverty more in relational terms, which I believe we should, you realize that a lot of people that might be seemingly impoverished really have a much fuller and richer life maybe than you do where you live.
All right, two more. Sharing a picture of you petting a cat living on the streets from your mission trip.
Cringe, I'm allergic to cats.
I'm going to say this is cool. It's at least acceptable. I'd rather you use a cat to show people that you're on a mission trip than objectifying a human being to get some internet clout.
Last one. Giving an unhoused person $1,000.
Oh, that's it. I thought that you.
That's the first part.
Okay,
And,
I'm going to say cool.
and then filming it for YouTube.
Cringe.
All right, that's all I have for cringe or cool missions trip edition.
Yay!
We did it.
Thank you, Carlos, so much for joining us. Where can they find more about YouthWorks and the trips that you're doing, and be able to reach out to find more information?
Real complicated website, youthworks.com. Yeah, if anybody is interested in a mission trip with us, just mention that you heard about this on the Gospel According to podcast or church memes. We'd love to give you a free mission trip spot for every 10 registered. We also have some free resource download for you guys on fundraising and some other kind of pre-trip planning resources. We mentioned that earlier. So we'll put a package together for you guys as a free download as well.
Sweet. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes.
Great. Thank you all for joining us, for listening. Remember to follow us on all social media platforms that exist or have ever existed: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. They're not just for posting pictures from your missions trips. Follow us at TGAT Podcast. Thank you for sharing the gospel according to with your family, your friends, and to the ends of the earth.
Mm-hmm. You can also send us mailbag questions on any of those socials or by emailing tgatpod@gmail.com. Same place that you're going to send those stories about the Ask Jesus or Ask Me About Jesus t-shirts, and we'll read those questions and answer them here live or on one of our social media platforms. And make sure you do your part in obeying the Great Commission, and you can join us on our summer mission trip of spreading the gospel according to podcast. One great way to do that is by leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever it is that you listen. Be sure you do that, leave your own review, and you can hear it here. We'll read it on your favorite Hump Day podcast. This was the Gospel According to Mission Trips. You frozen over there, Dan?
No. Are you waiting for me?
You're a little brat, and so you have to go on this mission trip.
I'm allergic to cats.